The smell of roasting meat drifted through the marketplace, making Lyra's stomach twist with pain. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows beside the waste compactor, trying to ignore the laughter and conversation that floated from the food stalls. Her scales, once a brilliant copper that caught the light, had dulled to something closer to rust. She could not remember the last time she had eaten a full meal. Three merchants walked past her hiding spot, their arms full of parcels and their faces bright with satisfaction. One of them noticed her and immediately pulled his companion away, whispering something that made them both glance back with disgust. Lyra tucked her wings tighter against her back and looked down at her claws. They were too thin now, the joints visible in ways they should not be. She had been on Meridian Station for 6 months. Her clan had left her here with nothing but the clothes she wore and words that still burned in her memory. Defective, broken, a shame to their bloodline. Dragonkin were supposed to breathe fire from the time they were younglings, but Lyra's throat had never produced even a spark. Her family had tolerated her presence for years, hoping she would develop late, but eventually their patience had run out. Now she survived on whatever she could find in the disposal bins after the markets closed. Sometimes a vendor would throw her a piece of spoiled fruit. Most times they would chase her away with harsh words and threats to call security. The station authorities knew she lived in the lower sections, but as long as she caused no trouble, they pretended not to see her. Lyra waited until the crowds thinned slightly, then forced herself to stand. Her legs shook from weakness, but she had learned to hide it. She moved along the edge of the marketplace, keeping to the walls where people were less likely to notice her. A food vendor had set up near the center, selling some kind of grilled meat that made her mouth water. She knew better than to approach during busy hours, but hunger made her take risks. She got within 10 feet of the stall before the vendor spotted her. His face changed instantly from welcoming to hostile. He shouted something in a language she did not fully understand, but the meaning was clear enough. He waved his cooking tool at her like a weapon. Several customers turned to stare, and Lyra felt her face burn with shame. "Broken dragon," one of them said loudly, a tall being with blue skin and too many arms. "Why does station security let these creatures beg? It is disgusting." His companion laughed. "I heard her kind abandoned her. Even her own people know she is worthless." Lyra backed away quickly, her eyes fixed on the ground. She had heard these comments before, but they never stopped hurting. She retreated to her usual spot near the thermal vent, the only place where she could stay warm without paying for shelter. Her vision blurred, though whether from tears or weakness, she could not tell. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Lyra realized she was falling just before her knees hit the metal floor. She tried to catch herself, but her arms would not cooperate. She ended up curled on her side, next to the vent, breathing in shallow gasps. The warmth from the vent touched her face, but it did nothing for the cold emptiness inside her. People walked past. Some looked at her with pity, but none stopped. This was normal on Meridian Station. Everyone had their own problems, their own struggles. A starving Dragonkin girl was not unusual enough to warrant help. She closed her eyes and tried to make herself smaller, willing the universe to either feed her or let her fade away. Footsteps approached, slower than the usual traffic. They stopped near her. Lyra kept her eyes closed, expecting another insult or perhaps a kick to move her along. Instead, she heard the rustle of fabric as someone knelt beside her. The presence was close, close enough that she could smell something unfamiliar. Not threatening, but strange, different from any species she had encountered before. "Hey there," a voice said quietly. It spoke in standard Galactic Common, but with an accent she could not place. "You look like you could use some help." Lyra opened her eyes slowly. A man knelt beside her, his features unlike any species she recognized. His skin was a pale tan, his hair dark and cut short. He had only 2 arms and 2 eyes, which seemed almost primitive compared to many species. But those eyes held something she had not seen in months. Concern. Real concern, not the performative pity that some beings showed before walking away. He held something in his hands. A package of some kind, wrapped in plain material. He carefully opened it to reveal food. Actual food, not scraps or rotting waste. The smell made Lyra's stomach clench so hard it hurt. The man divided the contents of the package into two portions with practiced efficiency. He held out one half toward her, his movements slow and non-threatening. Lyra stared at the offering, her mind struggling to process what was happening. This had to be a trick. People did not give away food to strangers, especially not to broken dragonkin that even their own families had rejected. "My name is David," the man said. "David Cole. I am a merchant here on the station. I saw what happened back there at the food stall, and I thought maybe you and I could share a meal together. What do you say?" Lyra's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Why?" David smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that made something tight in Lyra's chest begin to loosen. "Because you are hungry, and I have food to share. Does there need to be another reason?" She searched his face for signs of mockery or hidden cruelty, but found none. Her hand trembled as she reached out and took the offered food. The moment her claws touched it, her control broke. She ate quickly, barely tasting it, driven by a hunger that had become her constant companion. When she finished, she looked up to find David eating his own portion at a normal pace, not watching her with judgment or disgust. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lyra," she managed to say. "Well, Lyra, how long has it been since you had a proper meal?" She had to think about it. Days blurred together when survival was your only focus. "Maybe 2 weeks. For a full meal, I mean. I find scraps sometimes." David's expression darkened, not with anger at her, but at something else. He finished his food and carefully folded the wrapping. Then he looked at her directly, and Lyra saw a determination in his gaze that she did not understand. "Lyra, I have a business proposition for you," David said. "I could use someone to help with my cargo operations. Someone strong and reliable. The job comes with regular meals and a place to sleep. Would you be interested?" Lyra's world tilted again, but this time not from weakness. "I do not understand. You do not know me. Why would you offer this?" David stood and offered her his hand to help her up. "Because everyone deserves a chance. And because I think you might surprise a lot of people if someone gives you that chance. So what do you say? Want to try?" Lyra looked at his extended hand for a long moment. Then, despite every voice in her head warning her that this could not be real, she placed her thin hand in his and let him pull her to her feet. Lyra followed David through sections of Meridian Station she had only glimpsed from a distance. Her legs felt weak, but she forced them to keep moving. She kept waiting for the moment when he would reveal this was all a cruel joke, but that moment never came. Instead, David walked at a pace she could match, occasionally glancing back to make sure she was still with him. The merchant quarter looked nothing like the lower sections where she had been surviving. The corridors were clean, well-lit, and filled with beings who walked with purpose rather than desperation. Several of them stared at Lyra as she passed. She heard whispers, felt their judgment, but David seemed completely unbothered by the attention. He simply continued walking until they reached a door marked with human script she could not read. He pressed his palm to a scanner, and the door opened. Inside was a small office with cargo containers stacked neatly along one wall and a desk covered in data tablets. David gestured for her to enter, and she did so hesitantly, her tail curling close to her legs. "Wait here for just a moment," David said, disappearing through another door. Lyra stood in the middle of the office, afraid to touch anything. Everything here had value, and she was all too aware of how she must look. Dirty, thin, wearing clothes that were more holes than fabric. She did not belong in a place like this. David returned carrying a bundle of cloth and a water container. "The washroom is through that door. Take your time cleaning up. These clothes should fit reasonably well. They are from the standard station supply, adjustable sizing. Once you're ready, come back out and we will talk properly." Lyra took the bundle with numb fingers. She went into the washroom and locked the door behind her, then leaned against it and tried to breathe normally. The room was small but clean, with actual running water. She had been washing in public facilities when she could sneak in, always rushed, always afraid of being caught. She cleaned herself thoroughly, watching months of accumulated grime wash away down the drain. Her scales began to show hints of their original color, though they were still dull from malnutrition. The new clothes fit loosely on her thin frame, but they were whole and clean. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she almost looked like a real person again instead of a piece of station debris. When she emerged, David had set out another meal on the desk. Not rations this time, but actual prepared food from somewhere in the merchant quarter. Lyra's eyes widened. "Sit," David said, gesturing to a chair. "Eat slowly this time. Your stomach needs to adjust after going so long with so little." Lyra obeyed, forcing herself to take small bites, even though everything in her screamed to devour it all at once. David sat across from her with his own meal, eating at a relaxed pace that made the whole situation feel almost normal. "So," David said after a while, "tell me about yourself. Where are you from originally?" The question was casual, but Lyra felt the weight behind it. She swallowed her current bite and looked down at her plate. "I am from the Copper Clan. We travel between systems, never staying in one place for long. Dragonkin do not have a homeworld anymore. We lost it generations ago, and your family left you here." Lyra nodded, shame burning in her chest. "I was born without fire. Every dragonkin can breathe flame from childhood, but I never could. My parents hoped I would develop the ability later, but I'm almost grown now and still nothing. The clan decided I was a genetic defect. They said keeping me would weaken the bloodline." David was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "That must have been incredibly painful." "It is logical," Lyra said, repeating the words her mother had told her. "The clan must survive. Resources cannot be wasted on members who contribute nothing." "That is not logic, that is cruelty," David said firmly. "You are a person, not a resource to be calculated. What your clan did was wrong." Lyra looked up at him, startled. No one had ever said that before. Most species she encountered on the station seemed to think her family had made the right choice. Weakness was not tolerated in the galaxy. The strong survived, and the defective were left behind. That was simply how things worked. "On Earth, my homeworld, we have a different view," David continued. "We believe that a society is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable members. Casting out those who are different or struggling is not strength. It is cowardice." "Earth," Lyra repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. "I have never heard of it. Not many have. Humans are fairly new to the galactic community. We have only been traveling the stars for about 80 years. We are still figuring out our place out here." He smiled slightly. "But we bring our values with us, even when they make other species uncomfortable." Lyra took another bite of food, her mind churning. "Why did you help me? You said you have a job for me, but you gave me food and clothes before even knowing if I would accept. You could have just walked past like everyone else." David set down his fork and looked at her directly. "I had a daughter once. She died when she was young, about your age. Illness, nothing anyone could prevent. Before she passed, she made me promise something. She made me promise that I would always help people when I could, because she would not be able to anymore. I tried to keep that promise." "I am sorry for your loss," Lyra said quietly. "Thank you. It was a long time ago, but I still miss her every day." David picked up his fork again. "But this is not just about my promise. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes it really is that simple." They finished their meals in comfortable silence. When Lyra set down her fork, her stomach was fuller than it had been in months. The sensation was almost uncomfortable, but in a wonderful way. "So about this job," David said. "I transport cargo between systems. Legal goods, mostly medical supplies and equipment, sometimes luxury items. I need help managing inventory and loading cargo. Dragonkin are strong, even young ones. That strength would be valuable. But more than that, I need someone reliable. Someone who will show up and do the work." "Can you do that?" "Yes," Lyra said immediately. "I can do that. The job pays standard merchant rates. You will have your own quarters, meals provided, and medical care if you need it. In return, I expect honest work and honest communication. If something is wrong or you do not understand something, you tell me." "Deal." Lyra felt something strange happening in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as hope. "Deal." David extended his hand across the desk. Lyra looked at it, remembering how he had helped her up earlier. She placed her clawed hand in his human one, and they shook on it. His grip was firm but careful, aware of her weakened state. "Good," David said. Now let me show you where you will be staying. You should rest today. Tomorrow we will start your training. He led her to a small room adjacent to the office. It had a sleeping platform, storage for belongings, and its own climate controls. To Lyra, who had been sleeping on the floor next to a thermal vent for months, it looked like luxury. "This is mine?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "This is yours," David confirmed. "Take the rest of the day to settle in. There is a comm panel by the door if you need anything. I will be in the office." He started to leave, then paused. "Lyra, I want you to understand something. You're not a charity case. You are an employee. You will earn everything you receive through your work. You are not broken, and you are not defective. You are simply someone who needed a chance." "All right," Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice. David left, closing the door gently behind him. She stood in the center of her new room, looking around at the space that was hers. Then she sat on the sleeping platform, buried her face in her hands, and cried for the first time since her clan had abandoned her. 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and learning. Lyra woke each morning in her own room, ate regular meals, and spent her days mastering the cargo systems under David's patient instruction. Her body responded to the regular nutrition. Her scales regained their shine, her muscles filled out, and the constant exhaustion that had defined her existence began to fade. She discovered she enjoyed the work. The inventory systems made sense to her, and her natural dragonkin memory allowed her to track hundreds of items without needing to constantly check the data tablets. David praised her efficiency, and each word of genuine approval made her stand a little straighter. Other merchants in the quarter watched their partnership with mixed reactions. Some nodded politely when they passed. Others whispered and looked away. Lyra tried not to let it bother her, but she noticed David's business had slowed. Fewer clients came to his office. Some of his regular contracts suddenly went to other transporters. On the 22nd day of her employment, a Vraxian blocked their path in the corridor. Vraxians were large beings, heavily muscled with thick gray skin and small dark eyes. This one wore the markings of a gang enforcer. Lyra recognized him from the lower sections, where his group controlled most of the illegal activity. "Cole," the Vraxian said, his voice like gravel scraping metal. "We need to talk about your new employee." David stopped walking, but did not move aside. "Her name is Lyra, and she is legitimately employed. Station regulations allow it." "Regulations, yes. But you see, the Broken Dragon lived in our territory. That makes her ours. You took our property without paying the appropriate fees." Lyra felt ice in her stomach. She was not surprised the gangs had noticed her new situation. She should have expected this. "Lyra is a free person, not property," David said calmly. "There are no fees because there was nothing to purchase." The Vraxian stepped closer, using his size to intimidate. "You humans are new here. You do not understand how things work. Everyone pays for what they take. The fee for taking our dragon is 5,000 credits, plus another 1,000 per month for protection services." "Protection from what?" David asked. "From accidents. Cargo gets lost sometimes. Ships develop problems. Employees get hurt. For a small fee, we make sure none of these unfortunate things happen to you." David met the Vraxian's stare without flinching. "I'm not paying extortion. Lyra works for me because she chooses to. Your claim on her is imaginary." The Vraxian's face darkened. "You are making a mistake, human. A serious mistake." "Maybe, but it is my mistake to make." The Vraxian looked past David to Lyra. "You could save him a lot of trouble, Broken Dragon. Come back to the lower sections where you belong. We will find uses for you." Lyra forced herself to speak despite her fear. "No, I am staying with David. Loyalty to a stranger over your own kind? Pathetic." The Vraxian spat on the ground between them. "You have one day to reconsider, Cole. After that, we stop being polite." He walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing in the corridor. Lyra realized she was shaking. David gently touched her shoulder. "Are you all right? You should let me go," Lyra said quietly. "I am causing you problems. Your business is suffering because of me. Now the Vraxians will make things worse. It is not worth it." "Let me decide what is worth it," David said firmly. "I knew this might happen. Gang operations thrive on fear. If everyone refuses to be afraid, They have no power, but they can hurt you. They can destroy your business. They can try, but I have faced worse things than bullies with muscles. He smiled slightly. Besides, you have been doing excellent work. I would be foolish to fire my best employee because some criminals got upset. That evening, David received a message on his comm. He read it, and Lyra saw his expression change to something thoughtful. "What is it?" she asked. "A job offer. Medical transport to a colony that is dealing with a plague outbreak. The route goes through the Nerva asteroid field, which has heavy pirate activity lately. Most merchants are refusing the contract. Will you take it?" David considered for a moment. The pay is excellent. The colony needs help. And honestly, leaving the station for a while might be a good idea given our current situation. What do you think? Are you ready for a real cargo run? Lyra felt a flutter of nervousness and excitement. "I have never been on a ship before. Not as crew, anyway. It is time to learn. We leave tomorrow morning." The next day, they loaded the cargo onto David's ship. The vessel was called Wandering Star, a mid-sized transport with enough room for cargo and a small crew. David showed Lyra how to secure the containers properly, how to check the seals, how to use the loading equipment. She absorbed every detail, determined to prove herself useful. When they launched from Meridian Station, Lyra pressed herself to the window and watched the massive structure fall away behind them. She had arrived at that place broken and hopeless. She was leaving it as someone with purpose. David taught her the basics of ship operations as they traveled. She learned to read the navigation displays, to monitor the cargo hold conditions, to perform routine maintenance checks. Her spatial awareness, a natural dragonkin trait, made her excellent at plotting courses through tight spaces. "You have good instincts for this," David said on their third day out. "Better than some crew members I have worked with for years." Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest at the compliment. "Thank you. I like it. Being out here, it feels right somehow. Your people used to travel the stars before they lost their homeworld, correct? Maybe it is in your blood." That night, they sat together in the small common area of the ship, eating their evening meal. David told stories about Earth, about mountains that touched the sky and oceans that stretched beyond sight. Lyra listened, fascinated by the idea of a world with so much open space. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Your home world?" "Sometimes. But home is not just a place. It is where you choose to be, where you find meaning." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You may not have a home world anymore, but you can build a home wherever you go." Lyra considered this. "I think I'm starting to understand that." On the fifth day, they approached the Nerva asteroid field. David took the pilot's seat with Lyra beside him, monitoring the sensors. The field was dense with floating rocks of all sizes, some as small as pebbles and others larger than the ship itself. "Keep your eyes sharp," David said. "Pirates like to hide among the larger asteroids and ambush passing ships." Lyra watched the displays carefully. Her eyes caught movement a moment before the sensors registered it. "There, 3 ships, hiding behind that cluster to our left." David checked the readings and nodded, impressed. "Good eye. Let's see if we can slip past without them noticing." He adjusted their course, using the asteroids for cover. For a while, it seemed like they might make it through undetected. Then Lyra saw the 3 ships break from their hiding spots and accelerate toward them. "They have seen us," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. David's jaw tightened. "Hold on. This might get rough." The pirate ships closed in fast. David pushed the Wandering Star to maximum speed, weaving between asteroids with skill born from years of experience. Lyra gripped her seat, her heart pounding. She watched the displays as the pirates matched their movements, herding them toward a cluster of larger rocks. A voice crackled over the communication system. "Transport vessel, cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we will disable your ship and take the cargo anyway." David did not respond. Instead, he dove the ship down relative to the asteroid plane, threading through a gap Lyra would have sworn was too narrow. The pirate ships followed, but had to slow down, unable to match David's precision. They emerged from the asteroid field with the pirates still in pursuit, but falling behind. David plotted a micro-jump to throw them off completely. As his hand moved toward the jump controls, One of the pirate ships got off a lucky shot. The blast caught their rear shields, causing the whole ship to shudder. Alarms blared. David fought with the controls as systems began to fail. Lyra watched helplessly as their jump drive showed critical damage. They were stranded, shields failing, with 3 pirate ships closing in for the kill. The wandering star drifted among the asteroids, wounded and vulnerable. David worked frantically at the controls, trying to reroute power to the shields, but the damage was too severe. The pirate ships circled like predators around injured prey, taking their time now that escape was impossible. Lyra felt strangely calm. After months of starvation and despair, after finally finding something worth living for, she refused to let it end here. She would not let David be hurt because of her. "Can we make it to that large asteroid?" she asked, pointing to a massive rock formation nearby. David glanced at the tactical display. "Maybe. What? If we land, we can defend a single entry point better than trying to fight in open space. The cargo bay has emergency bulkheads." Smart thinking. David fired the maneuvering thrusters, coaxing the damaged ship toward the asteroid. They touched down roughly on a relatively flat section, the landing struts groaning under the impact. The pirate ships landed nearby, their weapons trained on the wandering star. David grabbed a plasma pistol from the emergency locker, checking its charge. Lyra had never seen him armed before. His expression had changed from the kind merchant she knew to something harder, more dangerous. "Stay behind me," he said. "If things go bad, there's an escape pod in the back. Use it. I'm not leaving you. Lyra, these are pirates. They will not be gentle with either of us." "I know, but I am staying." David looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. They moved to the cargo bay and sealed all doors except the main entry ramp. They could hear cutting tools starting to work on the outer hull. The pirates were not even bothering with subtlety. The main hatch exploded inward with a blast of shaped charges. For pirates entered through the smoke, weapons ready. They wore mismatched armor and carried heavy rifles. The leader was a Corvin, a species known for their brutality. He looked around the cargo bay with obvious satisfaction. Well, not so clever now, are you?" His eyes fell on Lyra, and he laughed. "I know you, the broken dragon from Meridian Station. Heard you found yourself a soft human to take care of you." David aimed his plasma pistol steadily. "Leave now, and you can walk away. Stay, and this gets ugly." The Corvin laughed harder. "You have 1 light pistol. We have 4 military-grade rifles. The human is brave. I will give him that. Stupid, but brave." "Last warning," David said quietly. The pirates raised their weapons. Lyra saw David's finger start to squeeze the trigger, knowing he could maybe take one of them down before the others killed him. She could not let that happen. She stepped forward, putting herself between David and the pirates. "Wait," she said. "Please, you can have the cargo. Just let us go." The Corvin lowered his rifle slightly, amused. "Look at this. The broken dragon trying to negotiate. Tell me something, girl. Can you even breathe fire, or are the stories about you true?" "They are true," Lyra said quietly. "I cannot breathe fire. I am defective. Shame. A proper dragonkin might have been worth keeping, but a broken one?" He shook his head. "No value at all." Something hot flared in Lyra's chest at those words. No value. That was what her clan had said, what everyone on Meridian Station had believed, what she had accepted as truth for so long. But David had shown her something different. He had proven that value was not just about what you could do or what powers you had. It was about who you chose to be. The heat in her chest grew stronger. It spread up her throat in a way she had never felt before. For a moment, she thought she was having some kind of attack, that stress had finally broken something inside her. Then she realized the sensation was not pain. It was power. "You are wrong," she said, her voice stronger now. "I do have value." The Corvin raised his rifle again. "Enough talk. Step aside or get shot with your pet human." Lyra felt the heat reach critical mass. Her mouth opened, and instead of words, flame erupted. Brilliant blue fire, hotter than any red flame her clan had ever produced, filled the cargo bay. The pirates screamed and dove for cover as the flames washed over their position. The fire cut off as suddenly as it had appeared. Lyra stood in shock, smoke rising from her mouth, staring at her claws in disbelief. The pirates were on the ground, their armor scorched but not seriously injured. The blast had been pure instinct, uncontrolled, more warning than weapon, but it had been fire. Real fire. From her. The Corvin scrambled backward toward the exit, his eyes wide with fear. Blue flame. She has blue flame. Retreat. Everyone out. The pirates fled the ship in a panic. Through the open hatch, Lyra could see them running for their vessels. Within minutes, all 3 pirate ships had launched and were retreating into the asteroid field at maximum speed. Silence fell over the cargo bay. Lyra looked at David, who was staring at her with wonder and concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked, holstering his pistol and moving to her side. "I do not know. I do not think so." She held up her claws, watching them tremble. "David, I breathed fire. I actually breathed fire." "You certainly did. Blue flame too, which if I remember correctly, is much rarer than the normal red. But I was tested as a child. Many times. I never showed any ability. My parents thought I was broken." David gently guided her to sit on a cargo container. "Maybe you were not broken. Maybe you just needed the right circumstances to awaken your abilities. Stress, adrenaline, having something important to protect. Any of those could have been the trigger." Lyra felt tears on her face. "They abandoned me. My whole clan. They said I was defective and threw me away. But I was just late. I was always going to develop fire, eventually." "I am sorry," David said quietly. "They should have been patient. They should have believed in you. All those months on the station. Starving. Being mocked. Wanting to die." The tears came harder now. It was all for nothing. If they had just waited. David pulled her into a hug, and Lyra buried her face against his shoulder and sobbed. Not just for the lost time, but for the family that had given up on her too soon. For the child she had been, convinced she was worthless because she could not do what others could do easily. After a while, the tears stopped. Lyra pulled back and wiped her eyes. "I am sorry. This is not professional. Forget professional. You just discovered something life-changing. You were allowed to have feelings about it." David smiled. "Besides, you saved both our lives back there. That deserves some emotional processing time. What we do now? The ship is damaged. The jump drive is shot, but the main engines still work. We can limp to the colony on conventional thrust. It will take longer, but we will make it." They spent the next hour doing emergency repairs, enough to make the ship space-worthy. As they worked, Lyra kept glancing at her claws, still half convinced she had imagined the whole thing. But the scorch marks in the cargo bay walls were very real. Finally, they were ready to launch. David took the pilot seat with Lyra beside him once more. As they lifted off from the asteroid, heading toward the distant colony, Lyra thought about the future. She could return her clan now. Prove she was not broken. Make them take back everything they had said. Part of her wanted that vindication desperately. But another part, the part that had grown stronger over the past weeks, did not care what her clan thought anymore. "David," she said quietly, "when this job is done, when we return to Meridian Station, can I stay working with you? I know I do not need your protection legally anymore, but I like this. The work, the traveling, being part of something." David glanced at her with warm eyes. "Lyra, you have proven yourself a dozen times over. I would be honored to have you as a permanent partner, not as an employee who needs help, but as a real partner in this business." "Partners," Lyra repeated, testing the word. It felt good. It felt right. "Partners," David confirmed. "Now let us get this medicine delivered. Those colonists are counting on us." The wandering star pushed forward through space, damaged but functional, carrying 2 beings who had found something precious in an uncaring galaxy. They had found each other, and in doing so, both had discovered they were so much more than they had believed possible. The colony appeared on their sensors after 6 days of slow travel. It was called Haven's Rest, a small settlement on a moon orbiting a gas giant. From orbit, Lyra could see the neat rows of habitation domes and agricultural fields. It should have looked peaceful, But the lack of traffic and the dark windows in many buildings told a different story. David received landing clearance from a tired-sounding controller. They sat down at the colony's small spaceport, where a medical team waited in full contamination gear. The plague had not spread through the air, but the colonists were taking no chances. The chief medical officer approached as they opened the cargo bay. She was a Talarian, a species with pale blue skin and large eyes adapted for low light. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. "You came," she said, and Lyra heard genuine surprise in her voice. "We sent requests to 40 different transporters. Everyone refused. Too dangerous," they said. "Not worth the risk." "The medicine is all here," David said, gesturing to the sealed containers. "Everything on your list, plus some extra general supplies we thought you might need." The medical officer's eyes filled with tears. "You have saved lives today. We have lost 60 people already. Another 100 are sick. Without this medicine, we would have lost them all." Her team began unloading the cargo with desperate efficiency. Lyra helped, her dragonkin strength making the heavy containers easy to move. The medical workers thanked her repeatedly, too grateful to care what species she was or whether she met their expectations. As they worked, Lyra noticed a small crowd gathering at the edge of the landing area. Colonists, mostly human with a few other species, mixed in. They kept their distance because of quarantine protocols, but they watched with hope written clearly on their faces that a human child, maybe 8 years old, stood at the front of the crowd. She was thin and pale, probably recovering from the plague herself. When she caught Lyra looking, instead of showing fear or disgust at the dragonkin, the girl smiled and waved. Lyra found herself waving back, something warm blooming in her chest. The unloading took 3 hours. When it was finished, the medical officer insisted on paying them double the agreed price. "I cannot accept that," David protested. "We agreed on a rate. You risked your lives coming through pirate-infested space to help people you have never met. You did what 40 other transporters with better ships and bigger crews refused to do. You earned every credit." David finally accepted, though Lyra could see he was uncomfortable with it. That was very like him. He did the right thing because it was right, not for reward. Before they left, the colony administrator approached them. He was an older human man with gray hair and a kind face marked by worry and lack of sleep. "I want to thank you personally," he said, shaking David's hand, and then, to her surprise, Lyra's as well. "Meridian Station sent word that you might not make it, that you had been attacked by pirates. We had given up hope. We had some trouble," David admitted, "but my partner here handled it." The administrator looked at Lyra with interest. "Your partner? I assumed she was crew." "She is both. Best partner I could ask for." Lyra felt pride swell in her chest at those words. Partner, not employee, not someone he was helping out of pity. Partner. "Then you are both heroes to us," the administrator said. "If you ever need anything, Haven's Rest will remember what you did for us." They returned to the Wandering Star and prepared for departure. As they lifted off, Lyra watched the colony fall away below them. She had helped save those people. Her strength, her quick thinking during the pirate attack, her very presence had made the difference between success and failure. She had value. Real, undeniable value. The return journey to Meridian Station took 8 days with their damaged jump drive. David taught Lyra more advanced ship operations, and she practiced controlling her fire breath in the cargo bay, learning to produce small flames on command. The ability was still new and sometimes unpredictable, but she was getting better. On the 7th day, David received a message. His expression darkened as he read it. "What is wrong?" Lyra asked. "The Vraxian gang has been busy while we were gone. They filed official complaints with station security, claiming I violated multiple regulations in hiring you. They also spread rumors that I am involved in illegal activities. Several of my regular clients have canceled their contracts. This is because of me." "This is because of them," David corrected. "They are bullies who cannot stand to lose control. But we need to be prepared. When we dock, they will likely be waiting." "What will we do?" David was quiet for a long moment. "We face them. Running or hiding only makes bullies bolder. We stand our ground and show them we are not afraid. You could get hurt, So could you. But some things are worth the risk. He looked at her seriously. Lyra, if you want to avoid this confrontation, I understand. You could stay on the ship or take a shuttle to another part of the station. I would not think less of you. Lyra met his eyes steadily. You did not abandon me when it would have been easier. I will not abandon you now. We are partners. David smiled. Yes, we are. When they docked at Meridian Station, the Vraxian gang was indeed waiting. 12 of them, armed with shock staves and blade weapons, standing in a semicircle around their docking bay. The leader, the same one who had confronted them weeks ago, stepped forward with a nasty smile. Station security was present, but standing well back, clearly having been bribed or intimidated into an action. A crowd of onlookers gathered at a safe distance, drawn by the promise of violence or drama. David and Lyra descended the ramp together. Lyra felt her heart pounding, but kept her head high. Her claws flexed at her sides, ready if needed. Cole, the Vraxian leader said, you were warned. You chose to ignore our very reasonable requests. Now we must make an example of you both. Your requests were extortion, David said calmly. I do not pay criminals. Brave words from a man surrounded by my people. The Vraxian gestured, and his gang members began to close in. Last chance, human. Pay what you owe, plus penalties for making us wait, or we start breaking things. Maybe we start with your ship. Maybe we start with your broken dragon. Lyra saw David's jaw tighten. She knew what he was going to say before he spoke. I am done with warnings, David said, his voice carrying across the docking bay. You want to fight? Then fight me directly. You and me, one-on-one. You win, I pay whatever you want. I win, you leave us alone forever. The crowd murmured with surprise. The Vraxian looked taken aback, then laughed. You challenge me to single combat? A weak human against a Vraxian. He flexed his thick arms. This will be entertaining. I accept. His gang members backed up, forming a circle. David handed Lyra his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. She grabbed his arm before he could step forward. Are you sure about this? She whispered. David smiled slightly. Trust me. He walked to the center of the circle. The Vraxian joined him, cracking his knuckles with anticipation. Station security did not intervene. Apparently, single combat was enough of a gray area that they could pretend not to see it. Ready to learn your place, human? The Vraxian taunted. David settled into a fighting stance, weight balanced, hands loose. Ready when you are. The Vraxian charged forward with a roar, fully expecting to overwhelm David with raw strength. What happened next surprised everyone watching. David did not try to match the Vraxian's power. Instead, he moved like water, redirecting the momentum of the charge, using the larger being's own force against him. The Vraxian stumbled past, surprised. He turned and attacked again, throwing heavy punches that could have shattered bone. David wove between them, striking precise counterblows to nerve clusters and joints. Each it looked small, but had clear effect. The Vraxian's movements became less coordinated. The fight continued for several minutes. The Vraxian grew increasingly frustrated as none of his attacks connected cleanly, while David landed strike after strike. Finally, David swept the Vraxian's legs and delivered a precise blow that dropped the gang leader to his knees. The docking bay fell silent except for the Vraxian's heavy breathing. David stood over the gang leader, not gloating, not celebrating. He simply offered his hand to help the Vraxian stand. The gesture surprised everyone, including the fallen fighter. The Vraxian stared at the offered hand for a long moment, his pride warring with the reality of his defeat. Finally, he grasped it and let David pull him upright. Blood dripped from his mouth, and he would have spectacular bruises by tomorrow, but his injuries were not serious. You fight well, human, the Vraxian admitted grudgingly. I underestimated you. Most beings do, David said calmly. Humans may not be the strongest or the fastest, but we are very good at adapting. We learn, we endure, and we remember that strength without discipline is just violence. The Vraxian nodded slowly. He turned to his gang members and gestured sharply. We are leaving. The human won fairly. Our business with him is finished. Wait, Lyra said, stepping forward. Her voice rang clear across the docking bay. I have something to say. Every eye turned to her. She felt the weight of their attention, the judgment, the curiosity. For so long, she had hidden from these stares. Now, she chose to face them. I was left on this station to die, she began. My own clan abandoned me because I could not breathe fire. They said I was broken, worthless. Many of you saw me starving in the lower sections. Some of you mocked me. Others simply walked past. You all decided I had no value. She spread her wings slightly, standing tall. But one being, this human, saw something different. He saw a person who needed help. He gave me food when I was starving. He gave me work when I needed purpose. He treated me like I mattered when everyone else treated me like refuse. Lyra felt heat building in her throat, but she controlled it this time. You want to know something interesting? I can breathe fire now, blue flame, which is rarer and hotter than common red. I was never broken. I just needed time to develop, and I needed someone to believe in me long enough to reach that point. She looked around at the crowd, making eye contact with as many beings as she could. My clan abandoned me too soon. They chose convenience over patience. But this human, this supposedly weak and soft species, showed more strength than any of you. He stood up to criminals. He risked his life to help a colony full of strangers. And he gave a desperate girl a second chance at life. Her voice rose, filled with passion. So I ask you, where's the honor you all claim your species possess? Where's the strength? You let criminals operate freely in your stations. You ignore suffering because it is inconvenient. You judge others by what they can do for you instead of who they are. And you mock the ones who actually try to make things better. The silence that followed was profound. Lyra saw shame on many faces. Even the Vraxian gang members looked uncomfortable. A figure pushed through the crowd. She wore the uniform of a senior station administrator, and her presence made several people straighten nervously. She approached David and Lyra with measured steps. I am Administrator Torres, she said. I have been watching this situation develop for weeks. The complaints filed against you are clearly motivated by spite, but they still required investigation. Your actions today, both in the fight and in the broader context, have cleared many questions. She turned to address the crowd. Mr. Cole and Ms. Lyra demonstrated remarkable character in their mission to Haven's Rest. They succeeded where dozens of other transporters refused to even try. The colony administrator personally sent a commendation. Furthermore, their conduct here today, while technically against regulations, showed considerable restraint given the circumstances. Administrator Torres looked at the Vraxian leader. Your gang's operations have been under investigation for some time. This incident provided the evidence we needed. Effective immediately, all of your business licenses on Meridian Station are revoked. You and your members have 48 hours to leave. The Vraxian started to protest, then thought better of it. He nodded stiffly and led his gang away. Several members glanced back at David and Lyra with what might have been respect. The administrator turned back to them. I would like to meet with you both later to discuss some opportunities. The station could use contractors who have both skill and integrity. She left, and the crowd began to disperse. But several beings approached David and Lyra directly. A merchant wanted to discuss transport contracts. A security officer thanked them for standing up to the gangs. A medical worker from Haven's Rest, visiting the station, told anyone who would listen about what they had done. But the encounter that affected Lyra most was with a young Zaurian, a species known for their frail constitution. She approached hesitantly, her transparent wings folded close to her back. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I heard what you said about being abandoned by your clan. Something similar happened to me. My hive decided I was too weak to contribute. I have been living in the lower sections for 2 months now." Lyra felt her heart clench. She saw herself in this girl, the same desperation and fading hope. She looked at David, who nodded with understanding. "What is your name?" Lyra asked gently. "Nira." Lyra knelt down to be at eye level with the smaller being. She pulled out one of the ration packs she now carried habitually, remembering what it meant when someone shared their food. She held it out to Nira. "Share a meal with me," Lyra said, echoing the words that had changed her life. That Nira's eyes widened. She took the ration pack with trembling hands. "Why would you help me?" "Because someone helped me when I needed it most. And because you have value, even if your hive could not see it. Tell me, what skills do you have? Over the next hour, Lyra learned that Nira was gifted with electronics and systems repair. David offered her a position maintaining their ship systems. Nira cried with relief and gratitude. Lyra knew exactly how she felt. In the following weeks, word spread across Meridian Station about what had happened. Other outcast beings began to approach David and Lyra, looking for the same chance they had found. They could not help everyone, but they helped where they could. They connected beings with merchants who needed specific skills. They vouched for those who had been written off by society. The transport business flourished. Clients sought them out specifically, preferring to work with contractors who had proven character. David hired a small crew, carefully selecting those who had been overlooked by others. Lyra managed the growing operation with efficiency born from her perfect memory and natural organizational skills. 6 months after David had first knelt beside a starving dragonkin and offered to share his meal, Lyra stood in their expanded office reviewing cargo manifests. She had gained weight. Her scales gleamed like polished copper, and her wings were strong enough for extended flight. She breathed blue flame with perfect control. She wore a professional uniform with David's company logo, and she wore it with pride. David entered carrying 2 containers of hot food from the merchant quarter. It had become their tradition to share lunch together every day, no matter how busy things got. "You look thoughtful," he said, setting the food on the desk. "I was thinking about the day we met. How different things are now." "Different for both of us," David agreed. "I was just a lonely merchant going through the motions. Now I have a partner, a crew, and a purpose beyond just moving cargo. Do you ever regret it? Helping me change your life completely. You could have had a simpler, quieter existence." David smiled. "Simple and quiet sound boring. Besides, you are not something I did. You're someone I know. There is a difference. I do not regret knowing you, Lyra. Not for a second." A notification chimed. A new message had arrived, this one from a colony in the outer systems. They needed medical supplies delivered through contested space. Multiple pirates and hazardous conditions. Every other transporter had refused. Lyra looked at David. "What do you think?" "I think people need help. And I think we have gotten pretty good at dealing with pirates." "We have, haven't we?" Lyra grinned, showing teeth that could tear metal. They accepted the contract. As they prepared for departure, Lyra thought about her clan, somewhere out among the stars. She wondered if they had heard about her, about the dragonkin with blue flame who worked with a human and built something meaningful from nothing. She wondered if they regretted their choice. Then she decided it did not matter. They had made their decision when they abandoned her. She had made hers when she chose to stay with David. Both of them had found something her clan, with all their traditions and pride, would never understand. They had found that family was not about blood or species. It was about choosing to stand beside someone through the difficult times. It was about seeing worth in others even when the galaxy said they were worthless. Lyra loaded cargo with practiced efficiency, joking with Nira, who was checking the electrical systems. David ran through the pre-flight checklist, comfortable and confident. Their crew moved around them, beings of 6 different species who had all been rejected by someone, somewhere, and who had all found purpose together. The wandering star lifted off from Meridian Station, carrying its crew toward another colony that needed help. Inside, Lyra stood at the navigation station beside David, monitoring their course. She caught his eye, and he smiled at her. No words were needed. They both understood what they had built. Not just a business or a crew. A family. A home. A proof that compassion mattered in a galaxy that often forgot it. And it had all started with 6 simple words from a human who chose to care when no one else would. "Share a meal with me." 6 words that had changed 2 lives and started ripples that would spread farther than either of them could imagine. The stars stretched out before them, vast and full of possibility. Lyra looked at them without fear, without doubt. She knew her worth now, and she knew that as long as she and David stood together, they could face whatever the galaxy threw at them. Behind them, Meridian Station grew smaller. Ahead, someone needed help, and they were more than ready to provide it.